I heard some of your statements that were made last night in the meeting, a pretty powerful statement. And, it was probably the most fired up I personally have seen you in quite some time. So to recap what happened last night, can you tell me a little bit about what happened last night regarding warming shelters and sort of your thoughts on these?
Well, first of all, as a foundation, I've been mayor now for 4 years, and I think it's fair to say that I have brought more money to this city to fight this issue than in any time in our recent history. And I certainly led the way with my colleagues on the city council to set the policy that says we want to bring people indoors by the thousands. And it's not happening fast enough. Now, I'm accountable, and so people can hold me accountable as they should. But last night, it hit me with the following situation. We were spending hours arguing about looking at video and arguing about whether or not the city police were treating those in tent encampments in the right way. What is the policy around cleanup versus confiscation of property? And it's important, but went on and on. In the middle of it, I got an email from one of the leaders at Loaves and Fishes who said to me that literally he was getting calls saying that these very tent encampments, many of them were simply blowing away because of the weather and the terrible gusts and wind. And so it just hit me in the moment. I mean, what I know and what I feel all the time, but it hit me that we should not be spending hours debating about the condition of tent encampments. We need to pay attention, but not as much attention. We should be spending our time figuring out how to more quickly get tens of thousands of people out of the encampments into shelter. And so I felt it in the moment, and it was genuine, and it was a statement of frustration, but it was also a call to action. Because it is not enough to make the policy, it's not enough to get the money. The city and all of our partners, the city and the county together, we need to get more people indoors in larger numbers faster. It needs to be a mission. It needs to be all hands on deck. And we cannot use the excuse that, well, it takes time and we have to get approval for this and all of the different checklists that you have to go through. That's not the way we would act if there was a flood that affected non-homeless people. It's not the way we act when there is a fire, a wildfire, and people who are housed are dispossessed. And so today at 3:00, we are going to meet in public session, in emergency session, and we're going to take action. And we're going to open probably for tonight at least one warming center, but I'm not going to be satisfied with one. We need more because the winter doesn't end until, technically the end of the middle of March. And the weather is cold, and I don't care if it's 32 degrees, 38 degrees, or 42 degrees. It is not an environment that is safe or healthy for people. And yes, I hear it all the time. Not everyone wants to come in. What do we do about people's equipment? Well, first of all, a lot of people may not want to come in, but a lot of people want to come in. How about we focus on them? And there are solutions to helping people with their equipment. We can store it for them while they're coming inside.
And it's so interesting that you mentioned that email from Joe over at Loaves and Fishes.
Yes.
Because literally about an hour ago, I was with Joe interviewing him, and we did like a walk-in talk show where Joe was showing us some of the homeless camps that were literally flooded and totally destroyed from last night's storm. I asked him sort of his take on your thoughts And he's like, well, I sent him an email during the meeting because I was so frustrated about all of this. So now it's like, it's adding up.
Well, his frustration was transferred to me, and together, if my statement ruffled some feathers and it leads to more people coming indoors, it was well worth it.
There are concerns, though, that the city was a little too late with this because there wasn't a warming shelter open last night when we had the brunt of the storm move through our area. Obviously, we know we're expecting more storms through the rest of the week, but last night was bad and the city did not have a warming shelter open. What do you say to that?
Well, I want warming shelters open every night during the winter, every night. Not episodically, not based on some artificial criteria. Cold is cold, wind is wind, rain is rain. We got to have places for people to come indoors every single night. And so that's where I stand. That's where I've always stood. That's what I've always advocated. And I'm going to continue to do so.
Can you explain, though, why we didn't have one open last night?
Well,
like
the reason,
threshold?
the technical reason is that we follow the county criteria on what constitutes a weather emergency. And it requires that the temperature be 32 or 33 degrees. Well, last night, apparently, it was 42 degrees, but the wind chill was 32. That didn't qualify. That's not right. It's plain not right. And we got to get away from these artificial standards, and we need to just bring people indoors, and we need to create the space. And by the way, think about public facilities now. They're being underutilized for good reason. We have COVID, and so they're a perfect resource for this temporary purpose. And we have to bring people in a way that spaces them appropriately so that we are not risking people getting sick from COVID. But you know what I've always said, and this often gets lost. We've had a public health order around COVID and homelessness that led to Project Room Key and Home Key. Without COVID, homelessness is a public health emergency under any circumstance. Those orders should remain in effect until we make a real dent and a difference for the people who are out on the streets. Because by definition, homelessness jeopardizes people's health. Why is the public health order related just to the COVID circumstance? Homelessness itself is a public health violation and ought to be treated that way.
We have seen some talk on social media, I think from one of our city council members. Pardon me, I don't have her name in front of me. I believe one of the city council members posted something confirming that someone experiencing homelessness did pass away in the weather last night.
At least one.
Can you talk about that?
At least one. That is terrible. It's a human being. That's someone with a family who, I don't know what the cause of death was, but nobody should be out on the streets, period. No one should be out in the streets, certainly during the worst weather possible. I believe we should have these warming centers every day, every night, throughout the winter time and during the summer as well. Got to bring people indoors.
Do you have any other information about that, the person that did pass away?
I do not.
Okay. But even just going off of that sentiment, we heard your very powerful words last night, and even just the statement of what you said of, people could die out there tonight, what you said last night. And, just hearing today that we did have at least one person pass away.
I know that I asked yesterday during the daytime about opening up warming center last night. So I did. I have been consistent. But I'm fine being held accountable, but I need help. We need help. We need everybody to engaged at the city and at the county to be all in when it comes to bringing people indoors. And it's either a priority or it isn't, and it must be a priority.
And so the emergency meeting today, just to clarify, will that override the county's guideline, the county's threshold with the 33-degree
Well,
thing?
stay tuned, but I believe that one of the questions I'm going to ask is whether or not the city has its own authority to declare a state of emergency using our so-called public safety and police powers. And I look forward to the answer to that question, because that will then determine our course of action.